Warning! Repeated exposure to Ren and Stimpy's Space Cadet adventures may cause temporary space madness.
People go crazy on these long trips.
It's Ren and Stimpy's Space Cadet Adventures, the latest craze for your Nintendo Game Boy.
Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society.
Oh, joy!
Let's rock.
It makes me wanna fart!
Dear Journal, it's me, Doug.
You have it!
Dig it.
Baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do.
That was a hoot!
On your mark. Get set.
Oh, here it goes!
Welcome to Splat Attack, where we're taking it back to the slime-filled past. I'm your gackerific co-host, Brett.
And I am your slime-tastic co-host, Alex. And all right, Brett, we're done with school. I'm ready to sit down and play some games. How about you?
Me too. I've been waiting all day. Like, the heck with homework. I'm just going to throw my backpack over there and see what we got in our library today to choose from. Actually, no, that's not true, because I had to go to Blockbuster to rent these bad boys. They're very special games. So as you all know, we mentioned or teased that in the previous episode, Nick Takes Over Your School 2, 1999, that we are going to be doing a playthrough of 90s Nickelodeon video games. And some of you may be familiar with them, some of them you may not. And to help us here today accomplish that, we've invited a very special guest who loves both 90s Nickelodeon and video games. Please give a round of sound for Max from Ready to Retro.
Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to be able to talk about Nickelodeon and video games. I'm all about it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of curious what your video game background is. Like if you have experience playing these games or what you played growing up without revealing too much.
Yeah, so my background, I grew up in the 90s, so video games was, it's what we did as kids. So I'm a retro gamer and a retro collector. I kind of petered off. Like when I was in high school, I collected all the Super Nintendo Segas because they were like $2, $3 in bins. And then I'd go to like thrift stores and I would get like Mega Man on NES, and like it was so easy. And then around, I don't know, 2014, 2015, everyone started to collect. Yeah. And then the hobby kind of got, it wasn't as fun. So it kind of got toxic a little bit. Yeah. And then video games are pretty much just in collectors' hands or in sellers' hands. So I've done a lot less of video game collecting, but I was kind of the weird kid in high school because this was like, early to mid 2000s, and I was playing like Super Nintendo, and people were like, oh, that's cool, but that's weird.
Yeah, because it wasn't like the current system.
No, and like retro gaming wasn't as cool. It was more niche. So some of the games that we're talking about, I still have. On cartridge.
It was more of a novelty at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't until later when it became really popular again.
Yeah. So I'm super excited. I grew up watching Nickelodeon, so to be able to talk about these 5 games, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's essentially 2 birds with 1 stone. You're also a big fan of 90s Nick, right? Because you've done some episodes on your podcast, and I actually had some collaboration with you in the past. Not only did we have you on for episode 11 of Splat Attack, which is 90s favorite 90s holiday specials, but we did some Are You Afraid of the Dark episode together, right?
Yeah, so this past October, episodes 70 and 71, Brett, you were on, and we were celebrating the 30th anniversary of Are You Afraid of the Dark? So episode 70, we talked about just kind of our love for it. Part 2 was we talked about our favorite episodes and stories and stuff. So you are like the Are You Afraid of the Dark fan and like the person. So it was awesome having you on there. And Alex, we got to have you come on Ready to Retro as well soon.
Glad to be there.
All right.
Yeah, it's great. You guys do really quality episodes. Always love hearing from your guests. And I can't wait to see what you got in store for coming months.
Yeah. Appreciate that, man. Just to do a shameless plug. So we just finished Sports Month in April, and we finished talking about the Mighty Ducks, and we had Justin Wong, who played Kenny Wu in the sequels. We had an awesome conversation. So if you are a fan of 90s or the Mighty Ducks series, be sure to check out Ready to Retro.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put a link down below on YouTube and also show it on the screen too.
Fantastic.
Alex, do you have any video game memories growing up in regards to like the games we might be playing today, or how you got into gaming?
Much like Max, I grew up playing video games constantly. Nintendo's mostly Nintendo. I never had a Sega in the house, but I was very, very, very happy to go to friends' houses who did have Sega, so I could play Mortal Kombat with the blood because you didn't have that on the Super Nintendo version.
Right.
But I grew up with them. As the consoles would evolve, I would go with the new consoles, but I never got rid of my old ones until Mom got rid of all of them at a garage sale. But whenever I was, much like Max, whenever I was old enough to be able to have a job and get my own funds, I worked at a secondhand shop. I was able to get all those consoles back, and I didn't really go into collecting. It was mostly just, these are the games I had, these are the ones I liked to play, and these are the ones I always got at the video store. I just got the games that I liked, and then I thought I hopefully will be able to pass this down to my kids. Hopefully this love of video game history. And that's pretty much where I've been. I still play some modern games, not very much. I don't really have much time to play games now as it was, but old school Nintendo and Super Nintendo were my favorites. And of all of the games that we are talking about today, I never played. For some reason, I don't remember them being in video stores here in my hometown. And I also was a little leery of video games that were based on movies and TV shows because they often were really, really bad.
Really bad.
That's a fair assessment.
So unless I had some friends who told me, "Have you played this? This is really good," I stayed away from TV shows and movies. And as much as I love Nickelodeon, even if they were at the video store, I would have stayed away. But
yeah.
I was. But as I grew into I had my second wave of 90s Nick appreciation when I got older. I was like, man, I do want to play these. I know they're going to be terrible, but I do want to at least give them a shot. So doing this episode has been great fun.
Definitely. Yeah. I'll just add my 2 cents too in terms of my background. So I've been playing video games ever since 1991. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was actually my very first video game because it came bundled with a Sega Genesis. My dad got it for me for Christmas, and me and my sister Chelsea would just play it like nonstop from Christmas to New Year's. I have very fond memories of like racing them in 2-player mode or multiplayer mode, whereas like we had to go through Mystic Cave, Casino Night, Emerald Hill, and whatever the fourth one's, I think it was Special Stage. And that kind of started my video game journey, and I really loved the aesthetic of the 16-bit games at the time. Just something about the colorful pixels and the way that the sprites were designed and how they moved seemed very whimsical to me. So, naturally I just kind of followed whatever consoles came out at the time and continued to like cherry pick and see what games appealed to me the most. So after Sega Genesis, I did not go with Sega Saturn, but I jumped on the PlayStation. And Crash Bandicoot was like a big video game series that like got me hooked into it. Because I just really love the way it platformed. So I was pretty much a Sega PlayStation person all my life. And then my other friend Max from childhood, he used to live like down the road from me in Connecticut. We'd always go over each other's house after school and like read game guides at the back of the bus together, play Game Boy, in the bus seats, stuff like that. And he would introduce me to like all the Nintendo games, and I would introduce him to all the Sega games. So we got a little bit of intermingling there. And, it just was a great experience overall. And very much like you, Max, it wasn't really seen as like something you do in like high school. Like if you didn't have Xbox 360 or Wii at the time, then you weren't like worth paying attention to, even though, the games are still perfectly good and playable even today.
Totally.
But I think it's just a stigma that has since gotten more acceptance as it becomes mainstream. The only downside is that anything that transforms from being niche to mainstream kind of loses some of its charm as it becomes more appealing. So, I don't really collect as much retro games anymore. I used to have tons of them. Now I'm more of like a minimalist attitude where I just like digitally download what I'm able to play that interests me at the time. And I keep my physical collection like very tightly packed of like only my all-time favorites that I love replaying. So at least games haven't like completely disappeared from my life, but it still like is in its own little corner when I want to revisit it and have some fun. Well, with that little summary of our backgrounds, let's dive in with the games we'll be reviewing today. Starting off, we have video game number one. Plugging it into the Sega Genesis is Ren and Stimpy presents Stimpy's Invention.
Okay, so your folks may act a little weird when they see you've got Stimpy's Invention, the new Ren and Stimpy game for Sega Genesis. So tell them it's the only game where Stimpy's mutatomatic invention explodes and warps the town, spreading giant flamingos and twisted lawnmowers everywhere. And you can be Ren or Stimpy, and team up for crazy cartoon powers like the Boomerang and Chopper Pilot. Hey, it's cooler than powdered toast, man.
I just hope there's none of those disgusting hairballs.
Stimpy's Invention, new for the Sega Genesis system, each sold separately.
It was released on June 13th, 1993 for the Sega Genesis, as I mentioned. It's a platforming video game developed by Blue Sky Software and published by Sega of America. Features Ren and Stimpy retrieving parts to Stimpy's invention, the Mutatomatic, after it explodes. Very simple premise. You have to go all around this like world map around town to gather the different pieces for each level. Got like a neighborhood level, zoo level, city level, like a weird space foresty level, like a science lab level at the end, and then there's like a dog pound level too that's based. All these are like loosely based off of episodes from the series, and the game title itself is based off of the Stimpy's Invention episode, which is like the final episode of season 1 or 2 of the show. At the time, they had like a ton of Ren and Stimpy games because I think they were just trying to milk it for all of its worth due to its explosive popularity back then when it came on the scene through SNCC. But we'll talk about those after our review of this particular game. Just a few more tidbits before we give our impressions is that something that's unique about this game is that they work in tandem with each other. And we might end up seeing that a little bit more in terms of gameplay mechanics with the next Genesis game we talk about. But essentially you can choose between either Ren or Stimpy to play, and they each have their own set of moves. Like I remember Stimpy has like this like rat tail towel snap that he can do. He can like throw Ren as a boomerang. He can use Ren as a helicopter. So it's really interesting to see like the different combinations of team moves they do together. And then when Ren takes his place, he has his own set as well. So it keeps things varied and interesting when you're going through these levels, which are fairly basic, but also have plenty of traps, pitfalls, and enemies to like suck your health away too. The average time to beat is about 25 to 45 minutes. So even if you sit down and do this in one session, it's not going to take too much time unless you get stuck on a level. And yeah, I think it has a pretty faithful art style to the show. I like the music. It's a little bit like tinny sounding, but I love hearing that Ren and Stimpy theme song on the main title screen. That's very similar to like the credits of the show. So what are your thoughts on this game, guys?
Well, I have the cartridge with me.
Ooh, so cool. Get a close-up of that sucker. Ooh,
there it is.
Nice.
So yeah, so this game was awesome. I think out of all the plethora of Ren and Stimpy games, this is probably the best one. I love the intro with the log, like just little details like that. It was like fan service, but it was awesome. This game is very vibrant, and the graphics are awesome. They're just like they nailed it. They nailed the look of it, the feel of it. I found myself using Ren a lot more than Stimpy, which kind of sucks. I don't know. I think it's cool that that on the levels you have to use both, but sometimes in these games, and we'll talk especially with Real Monsters, you tend to only use one because there's one that's like obviously better than the other. The freaking giraffe, like that jump scare.
Oh, geez.
It's nightmare fuel, dude.
They look like the mad giraffes from the canned episode of Rocko's Modern Life that are like unleashed from Conglamo. It's wild.
That's a good call. But just like all of it, like, why do you put a jump scare in a video game for kids? I don't know. But I just remember that was like terrifying as a kid. You would just go and then the giraffes would like go over
like
the
that.
wall and try to get you. It just scared you.
They're hard to dodge too.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, overall, this game it's not exciting, but it's a fun game. You know what I mean? Like it's not like a top tier game, but it's a fun game. Like it's a good time.
So I had an incredible disadvantage when I played these because I don't have them on console. I much rather play them on console, and my computer has a very, very limited space. So I had to use an emulator and play it on my phone.
Nice.
And that was a pain. Ooh. It was really, really tough playing this games on the phone because of the way the buttons are placed on the system, on the phone.
Some games don't translate well due to the touch controls.
So either way, I was still able to play it, and I really did like it. I was glad that this was the first one that I played, and I had no idea until the two of you had mentioned that you could even switch characters. I just stayed as Ren the entire time, and like Max had said, I loved the detail work that they put in there. I loved that they had Powdered Toast Man who would fly Stimpy up to Ren or the other character whenever you got too far away, and then he would here to save the day. And everything to me. I love that he would fly backwards across the map screen because that's what he did in the cartoon. The gameplay overall was fine. There wasn't really anything that was super challenging. It was met with obstacles, of course, but they weren't an impossible feat. It was a challenge, but it wasn't awful. It was awful with the phone. But if you had the controller, it would have been much more doable. The only thing I don't really care for is a couple of the missions were one of those, okay, where do you go type of places. It's very open and it's a giant circle and you keep getting stuck. But most of them were very linear, and I prefer the linear, and just tried to do a little puzzle solving of how do you get from one place to the next, as opposed to a giant scavenger hunt. My favorite thing about the game is you can slap Stimpy. I was trying to figure out how to reach this one point of the game, as there's got to be something I can do. What do these two buttons do? And I just slap Stimpy. What? Slap.
Get some frustration out.
slap. And then after having to do the mission where you release flatulence all over the place to get from one place to the next, and Stimpy keeps getting in the way.
Yeah.
I was really happy to go back to slapping him.
Yeah, some of the gameplay mechanics are rather bonkers in how you navigate these characters through the levels. Like, who would have thought to inflate both of them like balloons and then start squeaking out farts just to propel yourself? Like, where are we?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's wild.
I mean, it's different. Like, that's what I like about every single level. It's a different kind of gameplay, and it's not repetitive.
Right.
Which, especially during this era, sometimes these games can be super repetitive with platforming.
Mm-hmm.
But this game, although it's short, it's diverse. And I mean, that trippy mouth level where it's like that's crazy. Like, that's like totally Ren and Stimpy art and like grotesque and stuff. Like, that's why we watched that show, right?
Yeah.
And it was awesome to see that in a video game form.
Yeah.
That level, the one where they had inflated, it reminded me of two things. It reminded me of the underwater level from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game.
Oh yeah.
And it also reminded me of Super Mario World, where you would have to take the P and it would inflate Mario and you would just float to the end of the stage. Those two mixed together with the Ren and Stimpy sense of humor.
Yeah. I also saw Super Mario World with the map where he had to go to the map. That was
very
like,
much so.
Oh, they're totally stealing from Super Mario here.
Hey, it's a different platform. They won't notice. Yeah. yeah, it was a pretty fun game overall. There was a few frustrating areas, like particularly the end of the city level. I kept getting stuck on where like you go down the hill and you have to like avoid the potholes. But other than that, I enjoyed all the levels just fine. Like they didn't seem too difficult. They were somewhat challenging, but not frustrating.
Yeah.
You can navigate your way pretty easily in one playthrough. So
yeah.
What do you guys want to rate this then?
I would give it a B, which for us is Splatisfactory. It's slightly above average. It's the theming that sets it slightly above average.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'm gonna give it an A, and not because it like borrows all different gameplay elements from other types of games that we all know and love, but I really like the little detailed touches to it. I love the graphics. I like the areas that they chose. They kept things really diverse. It wasn't too challenging, but it wasn't too easy either. I like the uniqueness of the gameplay mechanics where you switch between Ren and Stimpy and they had their own movesets. Really loved the Sega screen with the log dancing and the marching band. That was just a great touch. And then the title screen music. So I'm going to have to bump it up to an A for that reason, which is, I think, Splatslint.
Yeah. I'm also going to give it an A, a Splatslint, similar to you, Brett, but just the attention to detail and the fan service, that alone just makes it a step above, kind of, because there was a lot of franchise games around that time. There's a lot of Disney games. There was a lot of just, cartoon games and stuff. And sometimes it just didn't feel like you were playing that IP. But this game, I felt like I was actually game or a Ren and Stimpy episode. So for that's why I'll give it an A.
Yeah. I think the faithfulness is what pushed it up a grade for me as well. It really helps to have attention to detail with these games. Before we move on to our next game, I just want to mention any other Ren and Stimpy games that people may be familiar with, or if they want to explore them further. There's also the Ren and Stimpy Show Space Cadet Adventures for the Game Boy, which was released in 1992. There was the Ren and Stimpy Show Vidiots, which was released for the SNES in 1993. The Quest for the Shaven Yak, starring Ren, Hoek, and Stimpy for the Game Gear and Sega Master System in 1993. Okay.
I have the one on Game Gear.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
How's that?
We can keep going on. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not great.
Okay, fair enough. Many of these aren't, again, we mentioned before, they were just trying to pump out as many as possible to see what, stuck on the wall. There's also Ren and Stimpy Show Buckaroos for the SNES and NES that was released in 1993. Fire Dogs for the SNES in 94, and then Time Warp for the SNES in 1994. So about six additional games in total. That's ridiculous within the span of like 2 years to release all those games.
It's so unnecessary, and it's not like they were good. It was just I don't understand. Like I don't understand the thought process of that. Like, let's focus on one show and just put out mediocre games. I don't get it.
Well, at the time, also, Nickelodeon had really hit its stride because at that point, they didn't have any major successes. They were really struggling just to find a good, consistent, successful programming. And with the Nicktoons and their other live action programs, they really had found super success, and they wanted to dive into other mediums to get kids' attention, and they went into toys. And they really didn't do a lot with merchandising with their main characters. Which is why you had things like Gak and all those other, the Color Rider and stuff like that. And they wanted to go into the video game territory, but they didn't really know how to go about it. So it was just make something that's good enough and do as much as you can. And that it seemed to have worked for them because it made them a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, from a marketing perspective, it helps, but I don't know from an actual like gameplay perspective, because most of these, I can't even get past the first level without being frustrated and turning it off.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't get why didn't we get a Nickelodeon Doug game? Just one, right? Let's just get one.
They made a Disney's Doug game called Doug's Big Adventure, but
just about to say that.
Yep.
They should have done merchandising with that. Missed opportunity.
I just think it's weird that in the title it's Red Hoek and Stimpy. Like they put his last name. I don't know. It was kind of weird. To me, it's just weird. I don't know. Go for it.
They kind of did that in the show too, where occasionally they just name drop his last name, like Ren Hoek. What are you doing, you idiot? Like, okay, so you have a last name. Stimson is Stimson J. Cat. What's your point? Like, I don't know what they were thinking behind that either. Probably just, again, doing everything they think would work for marketing.
It's funny because it's on the title, but it's not on the title screen, but it's not on the cartridge. I'm looking at the cartridge. It's the Ren and Stimpy show. Actually, the cartridge doesn't even have anything that says Stimpy's Invention.
Really?
It's just on the top of the cartridge, but it's not actually on the cover art.
Oh,
it just says
strange.
the Ren and Stimpy show. Yeah,
weird.
Well, I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's a video game. But anyways, did all three of us give our ratings for this?
Yes.
Okay, so it's B, A, and A. Okay.
Yes.
Just checking.
It was bah.
Moving on, we have video game number 2, which is Our Real Monsters.
Hey, let's scare them. Here they come. Look out. Real monsters.
Become a master monster with Ickis, Oblina, and Crumb in Nickelodeon. Real monsters.
It's so much fun. It's scary.
Scare your way through over 25 different monster levels with 5 bonus rounds. Switch monsters with 3-way control or team up to perform triple monster moves. So look out for
Real monsters.
Nickelodeon. Real monsters.
It was released on August 15th, 1995 for the SNES and Sega Genesis platforms. It was also a platforming video game developed by Real Time Associates and published by Viacom New Media. It's an action-adventure platformer, so to speak, and it features Ickis, Crumb, and Oblina completing Monster Academy assignments, typically to find an object of desire or scare a human. There's over 25 levels and 5 bonus sections set in multiple areas, such as the dump, the school, the post office, the museum, the mall, and Simon the Monster Hunter's house. Players can switch freely between Ickis, Crumb, and Oblina in order to take advantage of their specific monster stats and powers, in addition to their unique team moves. Ickis jumps high and swings far, Oblina reaches tall platforms, and Crumb can see hidden and far-off areas of a given level. Players can also attack enemies by either throwing garbage at them or scaring them using monster manuals that are scattered throughout the level in limited supply and hard-to-reach areas. Much prefer the Genesis version to the SNES version for the different sound effects, which is more rich due to the sound effect chip that Genesis had. The music, smoother controls, and yeah. I think some of the sprites were slightly adjusted too, but I noticed some sound effects were different as well in between too, because I did try both of them for the sake of this episode. The average time to beat Real Monsters takes about 1.5 to 2 hours, depending on your skill level. And from the impressions I got from the gameplay is that I think this might be one of my favorite of the bunch that we reviewed today. I never technically beat the game. I didn't as a kid. I did it now. I tried my best to get as far as I could. I'd always get stuck on that damn post office level where you had to like flip switches to like get the packages to fall on the mail lady. But from what I've seen, all the later levels are actually pretty cool and fun looking through Let's Plays on YouTube. The museum level looks pretty fun because you're like hanging from bones and jumping around and collecting like skulls and stuff. And the mall, you just kind of wail on different people, and I think you have to fight a security guard there. So there's a lot of diversity in the locations. Most of them I don't even recognize from the show itself, but you know, it's done in a faithful style that you wouldn't know the wiser whether you've seen a ton of Real Monsters or not. Same with the sprite work. I think the sprites and the animation look great, faithful to the characters. Really love their like scare animations, especially when like Ickis grows big. Oblina like turns herself inside out into this weird like shark thing or ear thing, and then Crumb like extends his mouth with like a bunch of tongues. So that's pretty fun to see. One of the things that bothered me about this game, even though I do enjoy it a lot, is the like platform detection isn't quite there, or like the hit detection, because sometimes when I try to do like the up B move to like use Oblina to get up to a higher platform, she's like doesn't quite line up even though you think you're lining it up, and that really does waste a lot of time and build a little bit of frustration for me. Same when like you think you're going to cross a chasm with Ickis's like swing move, but you don't quite make it and you have to keep doing it over and over again, or just, you know, leave the secret item behind as a result. But, you know, I think it's pretty fun. I enjoy the boss battles, not too difficult, but they're also interesting, aside from the post office one, that is. And I like the varieties of the levels. The heads up display that's like at the top of the screen is pretty easy to read. So, yeah.
Well, my impression, because I want to give mine before Max, because Max, I guarantee you're going to have more to say than I will. I hated playing this one.
Ooh.
And the simple reason is because I could not figure out how to do special moves to be able to use all three characters. Because, again, I'm using this on my phone. And I did not know that when you play this on the Super Nintendo, there is a button designated to that. Whereas on the Sega Genesis, it's a combination. And I could not get it to function right. And of course, I reached a point in the very first level where you have to do a special move to further advance. And I was stuck. And I just could not get it. Up to that point, I liked the layout. I liked the characters. I liked everything that you had pointed out. The only real nitpick I had was I didn't like that some of the enemies were so tiny and so fast, especially whenever you're playing on a smaller screen with so many things that are moving, especially little things in the background that are moving. It can be difficult to tell what's an enemy and what's not. And what would have really been helpful is at some point, something in the background telling you what button combinations to push to advance to the next spot that you need. Because a lot of Mario games and platform games, they would tell you that in the very first level with a simple do this. I mean, even on Super Mario World, you had the option to push one thing and it would give you a little text box and tell you this is what you do. And that would have been incredibly helpful for somebody who has never played this game until this week on a phone with one less button than the Super Nintendo. I want to play it again because it looks like it would be a lot of fun. And I love that mechanic of three different characters, and you're able to switch between the three, and each one have their own special skill to meet certain obstacles. But I couldn't get it to work using my phone, unfortunately. I would like to get it for the Genesis and actually play it the way it was designed to play. But as of now, I hated playing it on what I was playing. So I'm going to defer my rating to the two of you because I don't really have an accurate rating for it.
That's fair. Yeah, definitely having the proper controls, or at least something, you know, close to it, like maybe a PlayStation 4 controller can definitely help with the experience, because you can remap the buttons and kind of make it work. Because I know Genesis controllers only had 3 buttons and a start button, and you know, ours these days have a lot more than that. I think playing on a phone will definitely make it more difficult and hard to like get the original experience. And even the version too, because I don't know what Max has to say particularly about the SNES version, but I'd love to hear it. Because when I played the SNES version, I couldn't get past the damn guard dog boss, because every time I tried to scare it or throw garbage at it like I did no problem in the Genesis version, it had this like weird glitching effect where like it would tear me apart. I usually play as Ickis. I'd try to jump up to get away from it, and then I landed right in his mouth as he slided right under me. So I'm like, what the hell is going on here? How can I beat you if you're just going to destroy me unfairly? So that I can't really give a rating for the SNES version, but the Genesis I thought was great, handled well. You know, play that version if you can.
Yeah, so I grew up playing the SNES version. So to be honest, I didn't even realize it was on Sega. So I still have the cartridge. I got the cartridge later on. So I grew up playing it at my cousin Chris's house. My cousin is one of our co-hosts on Radio Retro. So I remember he had it, and I remember just like playing it and it was hard. That's what I remember. Like this, out of all the games, this is the most nostalgic to me. But I just remember this game was freaking hard.
Yep.
And going back into it as an adult, it's not as fun or great as I remember it, to be honest. It drags a little bit because you go to the dump a lot. And Brett, you were mentioning all the different kind of levels, but you have to go to the dump to get to those different areas.
Yeah, like in between the real world levels, you have to keep going back to the dump to get your assignment from the grumble. I think that's what the idea was behind it. But man, does it get frustrating going through like 20 different iterations of the dump and rats throwing little pellets at you and ducks squirting bubbles at you and like all this stuff you just don't want to deal with.
So it gets repetitive, where we were just talking about the Ren and Stimpy game not being as repetitive. So playing as an adult, you're just like, all right, come on, and you mentioned it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours. This game doesn't have a password or save system. So if you wanted to beat the game, you had to do it in one sitting. The teamwork aspect is great. You basically use Ickis. I like how you use like a Blina. It's kind of like a
ladder.
A slingshot. Yeah, ladder. And then you could also hit Crumb's eye, kind of like a golf ball, and you use her as a club. So that some of that is a lot of fun. Again, the animation's great. I felt like I was playing a cartoon. I felt like I was playing one of the episodes. Yeah, I mean the scare feature, I always loved that as a kid. Like I remember just like spamming that button and using
using up all your monster manuals before the boss.
I just remember like, hey, this is effective and this is really cool. And then, being a kid, you just don't get, at least when I was playing, I was like 4 or 5, I didn't really get it, but I just remember this game being hard and I didn't advance too much, but this game's super nostalgic. And the fact that we have an All Real Monsters game is awesome, because I felt like this franchise, this show, like didn't get as much love as I think it deserves. It's kind of underrated in my opinion. So it was one of my favorites, and just to be able to play a video game based off of a show that I love is just awesome.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Max. I mean, I definitely feel Our Monsters deserves more love, but it kind of fell in the shadow of the original 3 Nicktoons and Rocko's Modern Life that was trailing close behind too.
For sure.
And honorable mention, going along with this, it's very, very rare, but there is an Our Real Monsters arcade game.
Ooh.
And it's essentially like the test your strength, where you hit this mallet or you take a mallet and hit this pad and it shoots this thing up. It's essentially that, but it's a toilet. And and you have to use a plunger and push down and use the air to shoot this ball up to the top. I will put an image of it within the video footage, but it's a really rare item to even find.
That's awesome. I had no idea.
Very cool and bizarre. Like plunging a toilet at Chuck E. Cheese's. Who would have thought? Yeah. All right. So with that out of the way, what do we want to rate Our Real Monsters for both SNES and Genesis?
Well, I can only say for SNES. So I think going into it as a kid, I probably would have said an A, but as an adult, I don't know. It's not quite a C, but it's not quite a B. So it's somewhere in between Splat. What is it? Splat average or Splat Verge? Yeah, Splat Verge. That's
Splat
hard
Verge.
to say.
Hold on. Splat Verge, like average splat.
Gotcha.
It's just splat with like a bunch of words that describe it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Splat
it's
Verge
in
and
between
Splat
that for me.
Splash Factory. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I was gonna give this an A because I'm a huge Our Real Monsters fan and I really love the art style and the animation, but it still bugs me that I can't beat this damn game even today. So I got to knock it down to a B. It's going to be a Splash Factory. And I wish they had less dump levels and just more like real world levels. Or at the very least, instead of exploring like these heaps of trash, show us like more of the Monster Academy, or like going to Ickis and Crum and Oblina's dorm, or like going to the Grumbles room, anything like that. Just something a little more faithful to the show would have been nice.
Oh, I don't have a rating because I didn't really get to play it because that one spot where I got stuck. But I would hazard a guess, seeing from what you all have told me and knowing my taste, more than likely it would be a Splat once I knew how to play it and get it to where I could enjoy it more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to hypothesize that my guess would my rating would be Splat.
Nice.
Sounds good. So let's pop out our real monsters and head on over to SNES with these next two games. Starting off with Rocko's Modern Life, Spunky's Dangerous Day.
Introducing a new video game from Nickelodeon.
It's like you have this pet. This dog, small dog, but real dumb. Right, Spunky. And he's always getting into trouble, and saving him's up to you. Only you're this wallaby. Rocko, yeah. And there's all kinds of weird creatures. No, nasty neighbors, flying clothespins, evil garbage trucks, big slimy pools. You can float Spunky over like a balloon to save him, and you're
Rocko's Modern Life for your Super Nintendo Entertainment System from Viacom New Media.
He's your dog, and he's your problem.
It was released on April 1st, 1994 for the SNES. And no, it was not an April Fool's Day joke.
It's an April Fool's game, that's for sure.
Oh, gee. Hey, slow down. We haven't gotten that far yet. I got to say the basic info.
Heyo.
So anyways, it was developed and published by Viacom New Media as well. It was a puzzle platformer with escort mission mechanics, where you guide Spunky around various levels that are loosely inspired by episodes of Season 1 of Rocko's Modern Life, such as Trasho Madness, Sand in Your Navel, Unbound Slowed, and they actually had an original one called Ice Scream, which basically you just hang around the backyard and then go into Rocko's house. It was developed before the show's pilot, so it's worth noting that because it took 12 months of development to make, and I think it was in tandem with the development of the first season of Rocko's Modern Life. So like Joe Murray and Nickelodeon just kind of handed them some model sheets and some basic concepts that weren't fully developed past the Trasho Madness pilot, and they just said, here, make some of this, good luck, you're on your own. And that's why the theme song is considerably different than like the Rocko's Modern Life theme song you all know and love. So, the game was, it's also worth noting that the game was exclusively released in North America, which the other ones had international releases, such as in Europe, which I think is interesting. Maybe they didn't have a lot of faith in it to begin with. And it takes about an hour and a half to beat if you're patient with it. And boy, do you need a lot of patience, because when I played this, I could barely get to the second level. I was just like, okay, come on, Spunky, let's go. Oh, I got to move a trap over here. Let's go. I got to like pick you up to turn you over here. Oh my gosh. He's a little, I love Spunky. He's a very cute dog. I love him in the show, but he's just a little too bit helpless and dim-witted in this game to make it worth my time. And, I'm not a big fan of escort missions in general in video games. Like the only thing I can tolerate is like, I think escorting Ashley as Leon from Resident Evil 4 and also doing various escort missions / fetch quests in an indie game series called Deathspank. But I don't like it. It really sucks the fun out of like moving around platforms for me. Even solving the puzzles, it feels like it's like trying to cram mechanics of this PC game called The Incredible Machine into it, where you have to like set up a bunch of contraptions to like move Spunky here and there in like a Rube Goldberg machine that's the size of a level or looks like a level, and just hope to God that like all these different characters who are like baddies from the show, like the one-eyed pelican or like Earl the dog from Trasho Madness, don't eat him in the process. What I find interesting is that Rocko is technically immune in this game. Like he can get hit, but he can't die. But Spunky has a health meter using this little like bone in the top center of the HUD. So every time he gets hit by like either going underwater or by an enemy, that depletes. And he actually replenishes it by eating like beating hearts. It's very strange and kind of grotesque. And I don't even know why it's in there, but that's what he does to replenish his health. Like they're littered throughout the level. It's like that Indiana Jones thing where like the temple guy does the Kaliman thing and takes the heart out and it's like pulsating in his hand. will just take that out of his hand and put it in the sand of a beach, and Spunky's just like,
Spunky's doggy treats.
Yeah, no. Ugh.
Nick Day, brought to you by Spunky's Doggy Treat.
Yeah, for me, oh man, escort missions, they suck. So to do an entire game of it, that's a big yikes.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, I didn't like this game. I didn't own it. Again, my cousin was like, he had all the games, man. I didn't need to buy it because I knew my cousin Chris had it. So
Unlimited allowance, huh?
Well, yeah. So I just remembered like not liking it as a kid. I remember it was just like too hard and it wasn't like fun. And revisiting it, it's like it's the same. Escort missions suck. Like whenever you have to do it in a game, you're never excited. You're like, yes, escort missions. All right. No, never. You're like,
Not with more escort missions.
Yeah. So to do an entire game of that, it's like, oh man, but I will say the sprites are great. I love the animation where you're picking up Spunky and he's like licking your face.
Yeah,
Like,
it's very cute.
That's cute. Okay. I will say that because I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, it's easy to be critical about this game, but how would you make a good Rocco game? And I was like, you know what? I think it's hard because Rocco isn't a like violent character. So he's not like going to be punching stuff or fighting stuff. Really, the show is about how dangerous the world is and how Rocco is so innocent and how he, interacts with this kind of dangerous and kind of, skewed world. So I was like, well, how does that become a game? I was like, nah, you kind of have to shelf that. A better game would be like a really big man game, right? Like,
right?
Do a big man game. Like that would be cool. Like expand that universe and, introduce some characters and villains and stuff like that and have some, Rocco, cameos or like that sounds cool.
Mm-hmm.
But a Rocco game, I don't know. I was just like thinking about it. I was like, it's just hard. Like that is a hard concept to do.
Yeah, especially since most of the episodes are very slice of life and self-contained, so they don't really have any like narrative stringing through the whole series. It's just like, oh, Rocco's going to go skiing today. Let's see what hijinks and mishaps he encounters, or let's go hiking over here and see the same thing, rinse and repeat. I would say if a Rocco game were to exist aside from the really, really big man, try to go the point and click adventure route, because at least you can follow him through certain things, pick up certain items and use them to solve certain puzzles without having like all these random things just trying to kill you or waiting for your dog to like cross the street or fetch a Frisbee.
Right. Or also I was thinking like it'd be fun like if you were to do levels based off of the episodes, that episode where he's riding a dead horse, remember? Like
the good, bad, and the wallaby.
Yeah. That would be fun. Like, you're trying to avoid obstacles and stuff, and he's on the dead horse. Like, okay.
Maybe as like a Nicktoons kart racer skin.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I have an idea, but I'll get to the idea in a minute.
Okay.
But no, I agree with Max. Escort missions are they're an abomination to the history of video games.
Let's all say it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Escort missions they suck.
But oh man, it's awful, and I couldn't even get Spunky past the first puddle of water. I could not figure out how I'm supposed to get him from one place to the other. At first, I thought this punch.
You have to use like this little inflatable thing. Like you have to get Rocco onto it, and then it like floats back, and then you float with him. But yeah,
and I got that.
A lot of the puzzles aren't explanatory. It's very difficult to figure out.
But there's a little puddle before you get to the inflatable part, because I went through it as Rocco and then came back and Spunky was still there. It's like because I just got done playing the All Real Monsters and the Ren and Stimpy, and they were with you the entire time. It's like, all right, well, I guess Nickelodeon's going with a particular theme here. I got to the end. Where's Spunky? Spunky's dying.
He's drowning.
Where's Spunky? And I go back and there's this little puddle. Like, are you stupid dog? Did you just keep going into this thing over and over?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. Well, how do I get you out? And of course, Rocco has this punch. And like Max, I was thinking, this isn't a punch. He's not punching.
He's slapping.
There's got to be. I wonder if you're supposed to throw Spunky, pick him up and throw him onto a platform, maybe. Pick him up, lick, 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 puts him down. Let me try this again. Picked him up, lick, 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 put him down. What's the point of the lick, lick, lick? It does nothing.
Idle animation, kind of like how Sonic taps his foot when you're waiting for him to move.
And I was really trying to figure out how to get this past. And of course, there is one little place where you're supposed to jump, and you've got to do it right when he gets to you to keep moving forward. And some of the stuff that you have to interact with blends so well with the background or even the foreground graphics that you can't tell what stuff you can interact with and what you can't interact with. Some of the platforms you can, because they're a little lighter, but for the most part, most of them, they just look like background. What are you supposed to mess with? It's very, very cryptic. And I do not like it, Sam. I am. But my idea of a game for Rocco, because we had Sim Theme Park or Sim City on Super Nintendo, you could do the amusement park episode of Rocco.
Carnival Knowledge.
Yes, where you'd have like the elevator to heck, make your own horrible theme park and just make it successful. I mean, of course, that later became Sim Theme Park, and they eventually did that. But at the time, all we had was Sim City on Super Nintendo, and that would have been a fun thing to do. I mean, we already had Roller Coaster Tycoon and things like that at the time, and the technology was working well for the Super Nintendo. So that would have been fun.
I like that.
I would have played that.
I thought you were going to go the Sim City route and say like build your own O-Town and like put all these different buildings here and see how like the little characters interact. That would be interesting.
Build the Suckle-matic and watch Heifer with
vacuum people up like Age of Empires or something.
Oh, that's like the disasters in Sim City, right? You have like tornadoes, you could have the Suckle-matic. That'd be awesome.
That sounds so fun. Get on it, anyone who has game programming experience and is listening to our podcast. But anyways, so what do we want to give for our rating for Rocco's Modern Life, Spunky's Dangerous Day?
Splatful.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'd get it a Splatverage, a C. The only reason why I'm giving it a C and not a D is because of the sprites, and it looked great. I don't think we mentioned that, but the actual game looks great. It looks like the cartoon, which is fantastic because you mentioned it, Brett, but it's important to, reiterate, but the fact that there was no cartoons that were released by the time they were starting this, they were just going off of like, concept art and stuff. So it looks great, and it kind of felt like a Rocco's cartoon a little bit, but that's a very difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed the artwork. Some of it didn't really feel in place, particularly the original level Ice Cream. They were just kind of, going off of what little they had, which I applaud them for getting this far with, because some of the sprites do look great. Some of them are faithful to the characters in the show, especially like Earl and the Trash O Badness, like garbage truck. That was pretty frightening and good. And like the sock enemies in Unbalanced Load, that was faithful like to a T. But I'm gonna have to give it. I'm like stuck between a Splatverage and a Splatful because I really did not have fun playing this game. I didn't have the patience to wait for Spunky. I hated figuring out all the traps. I like puzzle games once in a while, but I don't like how clunky this felt, and it gave me a lot of anxiety if like he accidentally fell off and I had to start all over again to guide him through this gauntlet of random obstacles that were just different themes based on the level. I think it helps that there's also a password system for this game. As you noted in my notes, I gave you cheat codes in case you wanted to play it. So you can skip ahead to other levels if you just weren't having any of it and you wanted to see what the other ones would play like. So I do give it something for that. So I think, I was leaning towards a Splatful, but I'm going to bump it up to a Splatverage because I think based on the history of the game, based on the artwork, and based on the fact that there are some workarounds, if you get too frustrated, you can you can somehow get through the game, but you need a lot of patience. So Splat Fridge. All right. Moving right along to our fourth game, we have Guts for the SNES.
Hey, you.
Huh?
Suit up, strap in, and ask yourself, do you have it?
Have what?
Nickelodeon Guts, now for your Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This is serious, realistic sports action just like the show, only now you're in total control. Compete against the clock or challenge a friend as you take on 7 of Guts' toughest events, including the awesome Aggro Crag. Pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Best out of 3? Nickelodeon Guts, only on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Also from Nickelodeon Rocco's Modern Life, the game.
Do you have it? Guts.
Do you have it?
Who's that character that's playing aerial lacrosse behind you, Alex? Do you know?
Let's see if there's a name on it.
I do not see a name. It's just random kid number 1.
Well, I'm going to call it Gakoid.
There you go.
Because the one I had was red, and it was Slimester.
Nice touch. So Guts for the SNES was released on November 11th, 1994, and it's also developed by Viacom New Media. Apparently, they just were the umbrella company for all these games coming out of. It was an action platformer sports game with multiplayer options, so you can play either like a one-player mode, which was considered training, where you can choose your events to go through leading up to the aggro crag, or you can compete with someone else on couch co-op. There are no AI opponents for one-player mode, so you're pretty much just competing against yourself and seeing what score you got. You can have the option to pick your own team color, just like in the show. There's blue, red, and purple, as well as a myriad of characters that are in the Guts logo, which I don't know if it really matters. I don't know if their stats or like height, age matters. I think it's just for the sake of being faithful to the show.
Yeah.
You must get 700 points to beat the game on the Guts scoreboard to advance to the aggro crag and complete the game. And if you win, you obviously get a glowing piece of the Rackle Rock, which I have a really badass screenshot of that's going to be posted here. Yeah. The events include Slam Dunk, Basic Training, Attack, Tornado Run, Spirals, and of course the aggro crag at the end of it. The average time to beat this game, according to sources on the internet, is 15 to 30 minutes, but it really depends on how you handle the controls and your response time with them. I'm just gonna foreshadow here. If you're inept at the controls like me, you're gonna have to triple that time if you even get past like the first couple of events. So, my impressions of this gameplay. You're not gonna like this, but this game.
It was a little frightening from where I was, Mike, too.
I don't care if I'm censored and this is a clean podcast. I need to get that out. This game.
He's just a little scary.
So I don't like the design of this. I wasn't a huge fan of Guts growing up, like the TV show, but I enjoyed it well enough. Like that and Legends were typically on back to back, and I just watched both of them in one go. I do like the varied obstacles that we see on the show, but I don't think the developers really fully grasped like the concept behind the design of these levels based off of the obstacles that were shown in this show, because a lot of them feel like just very linear mazes, like particularly with the physical arena and the, what is it called? The Tornado Run. They feel very similar to each other, where it's just a bunch of like hanging pipes and ropes that you have to try and reach, and then a lot of like ramps that you have to slide down, and like pools that have water spurting out of it. It's not as exciting as you would want it to be. And I think a lot of that also has to do, in addition to the level design, is that just the physics feel very clunky and heavy. It's hard to control these characters. It's hard to make them jump and like latch on to like the things you're trying to reach. And there's very, very often times that if you don't get enough momentum, or if you have enough stamina built up in your little like Guts meter over here on the screen, you're not going to be able to make a chasm, and you're going to have to fall down and start all over again. So when it comes to like Basic Training and Tornado Run, that kind of sucks. And for Slam Dunk, Attack, and Spirals, it's essentially just like one of those aerial bridges where you jump down using like the arrow buttons and then press like A or B to like shoot the sport ball into the goal. And if you know how to do that well and you got the timing well, great, more power to you. You can actually play this game. But for me, all 3 playthroughs that I attempted on this, I couldn't get a single ball into the darn goal. So Man, this was just frustrating, and it stinks that you can't even like practice the aggro crag too. That's kind of locked behind completing all the other levels, so it's frustrating. It kind of dashes my childhood dreams of like wanting to climb the aggro crag and just lift that glowing piece of radical rock above my head. So I can't in good faith give this like any glowing review in the slightest, except for the cool sprite of the guts rock.
Yeah, this game is almost unplayable. It's that bad. Like, it's super hard because of the controls. I'm actually impressed that you got to the aggro crag because I couldn't even get to 700 points. Like,
just barely, just barely.
I don't think
it was painful.
You know, I remember, I don't know how or why, but I remember I did play it as a kid, but I remember not liking it, obviously. And then I played it now and I was like, nah, like, I'm not going to spend much time into it. I will say that the intro's awesome. Like,
oh yeah,
like, do you have it? Guts. It was like, all right. Like, I was so pumped, and then you get to the game, and you're like, oh, what a letdown. It's cool that Mo's in the background. That's cool. Yep. That's like that a little touch. You know, that's cool. I thought it was weird that, you know, they showed the weight and height of every kid. It's like 5'4", 105 pounds. I'm like, that's weird. Like, do you need to do that? No, like, we don't need to know this 12-year-old's, you know, weight.
Especially since they don't give you any clear advantages or disadvantages in overcoming the obstacles. Like, what's the point? It's like, so it would make more. It would make more sense if they just said like, oh, this is Burnin' Brian Ingalls. He's like, you know, he loves soccer, or like, you know, something basic, but that has more meaning to the character. So you're like, yeah, I'm rooting for Brian when I'm playing him through like the obstacle course or something.
Right. And what's kind of disappointing is that, I mean, it's 1994 when this came out. Like, the SNES has been out for a while at this point, and you're like, wow, this game is just not good. You know, it's like, it's not like, because, you know, early on in any console, you know, lifespan, you're like, all right, they're still trying to figure it out, but it's like the middle. And by 94, we had some really good SNES games. So for the fact that this came out, you're just like, yikes. Also, the kids doing front flips, like, that's unheard of. Like, I never saw that.
Were they part Power Ranger?
I was like, I've never seen that in a Guts episode. That's wild. And, you know, it's like, it's so clunky too, because they do like a freaking front flip and then they're like jumping. It's just not fluid. And it's just not a good game.
Alex, your thoughts?
He has it.
Oh, do you have it? He has it.
I do have
Guts.
And I am actually going to go the complete opposite direction from the two of you.
Wow.
And that's not to be first. That's just, no, I really enjoy the game.
That's perfectly fine. I'd love to hear it.
I do agree that the game it's not good, but I do enjoy it. It's one of those guilty pleasure games, just because I see it as a challenge, which is why I enjoy it. I do like a challenge, but I don't like this is impossible, or let me just mess with this stupid dog and watch it drown in a puddle of water. I don't like the fact that it's pretty much just two layouts. Because the basketball shooting is pretty much the same on two separate levels, and the football, and then the free run, essentially going through an obstacle course, is pretty much the same 3 times. Even though the aggro crag is slightly different, you're still pretty much doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it.
I do have to mention real quick that there is one, I think it's for attack, where like it's going from left to right, and you have a character on a bungee cord, and he's like slapping baseballs off one of the Velcro walls.
Yes.
But that doesn't really add too much to the overall game experience.
So I don't really care for that. I do like the layout of it. It really feels like, I shouldn't say it looks like a Guts episode.
Yeah, it does.
Because you've got the aggro crag at the back. You've got the theming of it all. I liked that it, as Max said, I liked that it had Mo. And the voice had her accent also, which was cool. The buttons were tough. The combination was tough, but I saw this as, okay, there's got to be a way to do this. It's not just your standard basketball shooting. it's Guts. Guts was always extreme. Guts had a special way to do things. So there's got to be something I'm missing, because when you go to jump off the platform, you've got to push down to build up your power and let go. And of course, I'm thinking, all right, build up your power and shoot. There's one more thing you've got to do, which is as your character comes down after you shoot, you've got to push the down button again to build power to jump back up, which is like, okay, that kind of makes sense, because you have to do that. You're using a bungee cord. You got to build up power, build it back up, and come back. And I got really good at that. And of course, to record the episode, I was playing this on my phone. And
oh boy.
That's what I felt your guys' issue.
Yeah.
But whenever I played on the actual Super Nintendo, I'm pretty good at it. I'm able to get to the aggro crag pretty easily. Playing on my phone, I just missed having the amount of points to get through, because it's oh gosh, it's terrible doing the obstacle missions with the phone, because you have to push left or right and jump at very, very specific points.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the same way whenever you play it on any console anyway.
Yeah.
You have to be at a certain point in order to make certain jumps. And you have to push a specific jump per area. And to do any climbing, you've got to be spot on with the pole or the rope, or else you're going to completely miss and fall. And heaven forbid you push the down button just slightly, because it's not just a slide down, it's a Batman on the bat pole, slide straight down till almost you're off. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I was not a fan with the tight amount of precision that was required for these certain obstacles with the button pressing. Like, I understand it's good if you're able to like get a hang of the rhythm for like the aerial obstacles and whatnot, but I was just fumbling everywhere, and I was just trying my best to like, okay, let's do this again. I'm going to take my time and get through this. And I'm like, ugh, it really hampers the experience if you don't get that down, or like have that initial experience on the SNES.
I was going to say, like, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is that this game is made for multiplayer. Like, you have to do training. And I think that's where it kind of misses the mark a little bit, because if you're doing a one player, you're just doing the training mode. And it's cool that it's like, two players and stuff, but it's like, in order to get the full effect, you have to have somebody else play with you. I don't know. It's just, especially as a kid, that's hard sometimes,
yeah.
And organizing someone to come over and stuff. And, sometimes you just want to wake up on a Saturday morning and just play. And, training mode.
Not to mention trying to convince them to play the game.
Come over and play Guts.
Right? Man, I'll stick with my Sonic. Thanks.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that we got to see like the other two team members like competing against you. Maybe that would have been a motivator to like stick through it and get through some of the obstacles, because in one player mode, it's just you and like the score that it takes track of. Yeah. Like I felt like, gripes aside from the gameplay mechanics that I personally had, I wish there was just something more to like hype me up for it than just like the theme song, because I felt it was lacking that kind of energy that was present in the TV show, where it's like, yeah, let's do it. All right, Michael O'Malley's psychotic. I'm with him.
Speaking of missing, I miss Michael O'Malley in this game.
Yeah, where is he?
That's a cardinal sin to this game.
He's the yin to Mo's yang.
Yeah. We got the cargo net, then the rings, then they're going to come down this fire pole right here into the elastic jungle and up the wall climb, and then down in the free fall. Oh, this feels good. I'm going to take a little nap. Mo, talk to me.
Psycho Michael, stunt guy.
I wonder how many kids, got this on a weekend, rented it, and was just like, this is the one game, They're like, oh, it's Guts. I love the show. I love Nickelodeon. I love Super Nintendo. And then you're like, well, you're stuck with it, right? Like,
yeah, stuck with it for the weekend.
All right. Well, those are the games where it's like, well, I'm going to get really good at it because this is all I got to play. So,
right. I'm with you, Max. Although I don't know if I would stick with this even today. I just struggled. But without belaboring it too much, let's give our ratings for Guts for the SNES. What do you guys give it?
I'm giving it a Splat full.
I give it Splatisfactory. I really do enjoy the game, even for all its frustrations. But I also see it as a challenge, and I like making myself get better at games, especially tough ones.
That's fair. And if you can get a hang of the controls, I can imagine you'd learn to love it. I can't in good conscience give this anything higher than a splatastrophe. So F this game.
Take a nap.
And going into the next one, this is the only one I did not get the chance to play. So I've got no input on the next one. So it is completely up to the two of you.
Okay. I mean, I got it queued up on my PC if you want to do this little screen sharing after. But anyways.
We'll see what we got.
Okay. So our fifth and final game for this 90s video game playthrough of Nickelodeon games, we have Rugrats, The Search for Reptar, which is for the PlayStation 1.
Here we go, kids! Terrence Turtle is my name! Turtle dancing, that's my game! Come on, kids! Everybody do the turtle dance!
Not having a good time? Play the Rugrats video game instead, with characters like Tommy, Chucky, even Angelica. Rugrats Search for Reptar. It's a 3D adventure, and it's only on PlayStation.
PlayStation.
It was released on October 31st, 1988, and developed by N-Space and published by THQ, which you may know from some other Nickelodeon games such as Tak and the Power of Juju. At least that's the one that immediately comes to mind for me. It was an adventure puzzle game, and it features Tommy, Chucky, Phil, Lil, and Angelica roaming around the Pickles house, completing various missions to earn 12 puzzle pieces to find the elusive Reptar as a result. Missions range from timed races, keep-away games, mini-golf, and everything else that you can possibly think of for objectives. Like, a lot of them draw upon levels that are actually based on the first two seasons of Rugrats, which I found quite delightful. You have Chucky's Glasses, you have Ice Cream Mountain, Mirrorland, Grandpa's Teeth, Toy Palace, Let There Be Light, Incident in Aisle 7, The 7 Voyages of Cynthia, No More Cookies, Touchdown Tommy, Visitors from Outer Space, Circus Angelicus, The Mysterious Mr. Fiend, Gold Rush, and Reptar 2010. But there's a lot of levels. It's around like 25, 30 levels. A few of them training, most of them main story. They're segmented by easy, medium, and hard difficulty. And you can approach them in any order too. So if you're feeling kind of gung-ho and you want to do a hard level right off the bat, you can go straight to Toy Palace. Or if you just want to take things slow and ramp up, you can go to like Ice Cream Mountain, which is easy. And they're all designated by a specific item inside the Pickles House World Hub too, such as like golf clubs or like a stuffed animal or like a flashlight. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great levels that draw inspiration from the TV show. I like the open-endedness of it. It is one player, so anyone who wants to hang out with you when you play this game, they're just going to have to watch and take turns, unfortunately. The demographic is intended to be like ages 7 to 12, so you got some like elementary to middle school, people playing this game that would enjoy it the most. And the average time to beat the game is about 1 to 1.5 hours for the main story, and I would add like another half hour for the bonus post-game levels, such as I think Mirrorland is one of the post-game levels. But anyways, just to sum up with my basic impressions, I think the game is butt ugly by 2022 standards. Like, you can't... I understand this is like a little bit after the beginning of the PlayStation era, but
yeah,
Crash Bandicoot's kind of the gold standard for action platformer games, and that game looked beautiful. This, by comparison, you got all these flat shapes on like these blobby polygonal models of the characters. I think they would have been better off if they did like 2D 16-bit sprites. I think it would translate a lot better. But aside from like my dissatisfaction with the visuals, I think that what's going for it is really the gameplay here. There's a variety of gameplay similar to Ren and Stimpy, where you can try a whole bunch of different things, whether it's like a rescue mission, mini golf. You can play during the day and at night. You got some races going on. I like how Mark Mothersbaugh, who's the main guy in the 80s band Devo, not only did music for the Rugrats show, but he did original soundtracks specific to levels in this game.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it acts as like more of a standalone game instead of just drawing everything immediately from Rugrats. The game's not too long. I like how it has an open-ended structure where you can choose the levels that you want to play, and there's some goodies to find too beyond just the Reptar puzzle pieces and the Reptar bars that you collect. I think the Reptar bars are for unlockables. I don't remember exactly, but aside from being a very dated-looking game, there's a lot of fun to be had here. What do you guys think?
For me, this game is nostalgic. I remember my aunt and uncle having this game. They had a PlayStation, which at the time I thought it was weird because their kid was only like 1 or 2 at the time, and they were kind of older. So I was like, they're not playing it. So I realized after it was like for me and like for my other cousins that were visiting. So I remember like going there and playing this game, and this is my history with it. So I remember watching the intro, and it is the Rugrats theme intro, and it's kind of like this like 3D kind of it's not great in today's standards like Brett was talking about, but I remember at the time I thought it was so cool. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like 3D and futuristic looking, so this game came out on Halloween, which was I think was interesting. So I was probably eight or 9 when I played this, but I remember this. Like, I remember playing in the Pickles household and like exploring it was just like mind-boggling to me. I thought it was so cool because I wasn't constrained to, the cartoon. It was like one of the first like open kind of world experiences that I had as a gamer. So I remember like thinking, wow, this is so cool. I'm exploring the Pickles household, which I've never done before. Or it was a really cool experience. So I love the cutscenes, and I love that the original voices were part of it, and that it wasn't just taken from the cartoon, but they actually had the voice actors come in and do some lines for this game specifically. There's a lot of little details like with Tommy crawling up the stairs, like he's like standing, crawling. Yeah, you mentioned the not having an analog stick, and especially like being a modern gamer now and like trying to figure it out, it's like really difficult. So,
yeah, it feels like tank controls when you're using the shoulder buttons to navigate the camera, and then with the D-pad exclusively.
Totally. And it's not like, I mean, it was 98, almost 99. So the analog sticks were around at that time. So it's like, why didn't they include that? And then like the mini golf, it was cool because there's like a lot of different aspects to this game. But the mini golf was 9 holes. It just needed to be like 3 to 5. Like 9, it was like, all right. And it's not very hard. You just hit it and like making hole in one and stuff. So, I mean, overall, for me, this game is nostalgic and I have great memories with it. But I remember it's not terrible. Like, going from Guts to this personally, I'm like, it's huge difference, This game, although is like hard, like any PlayStation game with the controls, you go back to these games, that's part of going back, and like you have to kind of refigure your brain because you're so used to like fluid camera angles now, and that's part of like the challenge is like, all right, how do I just play this game with the camera angles? And this game specifically is one of those challenges.
Yeah, it's going back to basics, and like you have to psych yourself out into saying, okay, I'm used to all these quality of life changes that were introduced among the different console generations, but we just have to kind of pull things back to do it old school faithful. And plus, who doesn't love like destroying a city with Reptar at the end as he's like trying to make his way to City Hall?
Right.
That music used to scare me at the end because it's so foreboding. But I think it was a great reward for surviving all these different like missions you had to do around the Pickles house and even beyond that.
Yeah, and the ending's so weird. It's just Reptar like dancing for a very long time.
With like a top hat and cane.
It's like, all right, that's the ending. Cool. Like, I guess.
Apparently, Tommy resurrected Reptar from his puzzle once he got all the pieces together, like some sort of relic from the Ark of the Covenant. I don't know.
Oh, that's dark. I like it. I will mention that also Stu in this game is very nightmare fuel. Like, His eyes
Yeah.
are just so wide, and he's got this grin, and it's just creepy. He's just like, I'm like, no, I don't like it. I don't like it.
If you think that's bad, try going into the basement where his like workshop is with all the Mr. Fiend dolls. Ugh. Ugh. Alex, would you like to chime in?
I've got nothing.
Oh.
This came at a point when I was much more into games like Metal Gear Solid and things like that, and Crash Bandicoot and things like that. So I really didn't even consider giving Rugrats a look at all. But I will say this is the only game that I have seen fans of Nickelodeon in different groups throw a lot of love to this game. This is the only one that I've seen up to in the history of the Nickelodeon game. I've seen a lot of disdain for the games that we have talked about up to this point. This is the first one where I've seen people go, oh man, I used to love this game when I was a kid. I still love this game. Like, wait, what? There's a Nickelodeon game that's actually good?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of nostalgia going on because of like how popular Rugrats was at the time. So it really hit home with like Max and I, and even my sister, when we used to play the game back then, when it was fresh out of, the
fresh out the box.
Store. Yeah. Stop, look, and watch. Ready, yet, get set. It's Rugrats. Yeah. I think that's pretty well said. I don't know what else we can really say beyond that. I think, even if our experiences vary with all these 90s Nick video games, it's still important to recognize that they're a part of its history and like, its efforts to try and branch out and try new things to further interact with kids, because at the end of the day, Nick is kids. Yeah. And, Geraldine Laybourne, who was running Nickelodeon during the golden era, she understood that to a T. So, even if not every ball or dart sticks on the wall, at least some of them do. And, that's why we get to share our memories here so fondly.
Absolutely. I will say real quickly about this game. I really like the spaceship level, and it was about the imagination. And I think if I were to critique this game, it didn't have enough of those imagination-based levels. And it just had like that one, like I would have loved a Mega Diapers Baby level. Like that would have been fantastic.
Hell yeah.
That would have been awesome.
Like if we had that today and like you get to play like 4 players with each of the babies against like a mega boss of Angelica in her like mech robo outfit, man, I'd be on that like flies to manure.
Dude,
it's just,
that would be an awesome beat 'em up.
Hell
like
yeah.
a TMNT arcade, do a Mega Diapers Babies like beat 'em up. That would be awesome.
The game I have always wanted but didn't know I needed until now. Yeah. So with that being said, what do you want to rate this, Max?
I will rate this. I'll give it a B. Satisfactory. Okay. Yeah, definitely.
For the nostalgia factor and the fact that I still replay this on occasion today, I'm going to bump it up to an A. Nice. So Splat excellent. Yeah, I love this game.
It's good. Nice.
I don't like looking at it, but I love playing it.
I think if I would give it an A if the controls, like the cameras, were better, but it's still good.
That's fair. I'm just keeping things in mind in like the whole spectrum of our grading system, because like, with the SSS and SS, it's like, oh, this goes beyond our expectations and stuff like that. So for me, this meets the expectations without doing anything too fancy.
Cool.
All right. So, that pretty much wraps up our playthrough of 90s Nick video games. Before we jump into our segment and close up the episode, we're actually going to do some honorable and dishonorable mentions real quick. Max, do you have any for us at all?
Yeah. So I know we mentioned it earlier before, and I know this is not a Nickelodeon game, but I do want to mention it because I don't think many people know about it, but it's Doug's Big Game on Game Boy Advance. So it's not great.
Game Boy Color, I think.
Oh, okay. Game Boy Color. Yeah, it is Color. Okay. So it's not great, but the fact that it's a Doug game, I just love. It's like a kind of, I don't know, you just do errands for everybody, and then you do like these mini games, but to be able to be Quail Man, it's awesome, right? Like, I wish it was a Super Nintendo release, and I wish Nickelodeon had the rights to it, because, the Disney Doug wasn't that great. But the fact that there's a Doug game, and I don't think many people know about it, it's worth checking out.
Definitely. I used to have this one for my Game Boy Color when I was a kid, and I just remember enjoying exploring all like the popular locations of Bluffington, like just going into Doug's house, meeting all the characters. And there's even some sections where like, I think it's the Quailman sections where you're flying around and you have to defeat like a Hydra version of Judy and like Roger as Clotzilla. It's fun. I mean, Disney Doug qualms aside, this game is still worth playing if you just treat it as a everyday adventure game for the Game Boy. I'm gonna mention the follow-up game to Rugrats Search for Reptar with Rugrats Studio Tour, which came out on the PlayStation in 1999.
That's a fun game.
Yeah. What I like about it is that, maybe it's not as faithful to the show as the previous game was, but it took like a lot of the gameplay elements that I enjoyed about the first game and just took it a little bit further. And this time they essentially just go to like Hollywood to some backlots and explore like different themed worlds. So you have like a pirate world, you have a Western world, you have a space world, you have like this race car derby type thing where you can do like kart racing within the game. You get more mini golf, which, love it or hate it, it's there. I personally love it, but if you guys don't, that's fine. And then I think you get another Reptar chase too at the end, where like he's chasing you Indiana Jones style, like a giant boulder, and you have to escape from him. So even if you're not like too like particular about how it relates to the source material, it's a really fun game and has a lot of replay value.
And for me, like I said earlier, I didn't play any Nickelodeon games when I was a kid, but there is one game that I did play, and it's a loophole, but it's one of those one of the things that made the network so special was how they would pull already existing cartoons over into the network to fill certain time slots, especially in the early 90s. And this cartoon show was one that was re-syndicated from a different network, but they played it back on Nickelodeon for a while. So it's still wrapped up in Nickelodeon history for me. And it is Tiny Toon Adventures Cartoon Workshop. They had about 3 different games. I think they had a platform game, 2 platform games, but this was really where my appreciation for film editing came into play. This came out in August of 92. It was made by Konami, and there's no linear game to this. You're making your own cartoon. You can pick the backdrop that you want. You'd have the Acme University, you'd have an Old West setting, you'd have underwater, and then you'd have your list of characters, and each character had a specific movement that they could do, and you just make your own cartoon. And it was very simple, but I really loved it.
They had a game like that on the computers, like an X-Men cartoon maker. I used to play the crap out of that. It reminds me of that.
Movie Maker PC games were definitely all the rage back then, because I used to play Simpsons Movie Maker too. And I think it was just to get kids into like editing and stuff like that. So, it's good that we have those experiences as well.
Totally.
I was just going to mention really quick that I also forgot as a quick honorable mention, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Orpheus Curse, which was a full motion video PC game that came out in 1994. I actually owned that and played it, and I gave it away as like a giveaway on Instagram in 2020. So that's like a basic point and click adventure mystery game where you're like stuck inside of an old magic theater, and there's this like evil curse that you have to break free so that you're not like killed in the final magic act. And it's a lot of fun. It could be a little clunky to solve the puzzles at times, but overall it feels pretty faithful to the show. And they even include like video sequences of the Midnight Society reacting to your decisions too, so that cool. Adds a little extra flair to it.
Cool. I will say Alex's answer reminded me of another kind of Nickelodeon. It wasn't a Nickelodeon original, but it was played on Nickelodeon, is Inspector Gadget. And there's a great Super Nintendo game on, Super Nintendo game of Inspector Gadget. Use puzzles and stuff. It's very faithful to the cartoon. So that's a great game as well.
Cool. For my dishonorable mention, we'll move on there. I'm just going to be brief with this. This is Double Dare for the NES, and I really did not like this game. I did get a chance to play it back in the day when I had friends who owned an NES. and it just, I don't know, it really didn't capture the spirit of the show like I wanted it to. Maybe my expectations were too high, but I didn't like the fact that Mark Summers wasn't in the game as just kind of some generic host. The questions are kind of offbeat, like you wouldn't really know what they were, even more so than like the actual Double Dare questions. The color palette was kind of a muddy butterscotch kind of brown for most of it, so it didn't have that vibrancy that I thought it would with like the game show stage. There's no PC port. It's relatively hard to find these days. I just don't recommend it. Like, it's one of those instances where they tried something for the sake of trying something, but you're just better off with the source material.
Yeah, that is the correct answer. It's not good. You know what was better was that like that home kind of version of Double Dare. It was kind of like a board game where that's better than playing the video game. But yeah.
Do you have it, Alex?
No freaking way. I'll just keep going. But yeah, it just it doesn't look like the Double Dare game. Like the angles and like it looks like a stadium full of people in the background instead of like a studio. Yes, he does have it. Fantastic.
You might have to turn off your background so we can see it better, or just up close.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's better than the video game version.
Alex is a floating head.
Alex, have you had that since childhood, or how did you get that?
Oh, it's the ring toss game.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
No, we can't hear.
You can't hear us. I was going to say, Alex, how did you get that? Is that from childhood, or how did you acquire that?
That is through eBay.
Nice. Nice.
Great condition.
I was having a game night with some friends, and I wanted to have a retro Nickelodeon board game night. So I've got that and Alex Mack and Are You Afraid of the Dark, Finders Keepers, TV Land.
Wow, that's awesome.
Got a bunch of them, and I didn't know these things existed. So I wonder if Nickelodeon has any. They do. I must have them all.
They also had a Rugrats and Doug board game too that had like a pop up with like several layers. I used to have both as a kid, but I was too young and too foolish to realize how to play it. So unfortunately that fell apart within a month.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But that's really cool. Thanks for sharing, Alex.
Well, we'll have to do an episode on those at some point.
Oh, definitely. Got to cover the board games. Do you anyone have any other dishonorable mentions?
Fire Dogs.
What do you dislike about Fire Dogs?
Its existence. It's frustrating. It is incredibly frustrating and incredibly unfair. If you really want a good comical deep dive into it, go check out Cinemassacre's review of it, because it's hilarious and very, very accurate to how incredibly frustrating this game is.
Fair enough. I actually used to have like a Tiger Electronic version of Fire Dogs as a kid when I was in second grade.
Wow.
It had this weird, it was gray, and it had this like weird oblong rectangular screen and then like the bottom of a Game Boy. So it was like top heavy, and there was only like 2 buttons on it where you had to move left and right. And I think you had to press a button to like catch it. I don't know the specifics, but I remember being addicted to that thing back when Tiger Electronics were a thing, and you were basically at the burning building as Ren and Stimpy with like the trampoline at the bottom, moving left and right like bloop, 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 Game & Watch style.
Yeah.
And you had to save like the walrus, the horse, the old lady, and I think the baby was the 4th one. And you just progress different levels by catching them faster and like racking up your score. And, as frustrating as that can be from time to time for like an arcade format, that's probably like my earliest Nickelodeon video game memory, because that came out in 92 or 3, I believe.
Yeah, I'm checking it out on Google right now. Dude, it looks just like a Game Boy.
Right? Like a knockoff Game Boy.
There's a lot of buttons for a handheld back then.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good, but it looks cool.
We got to show that for our Slimesters and Gackoids so they can see what I saw back then.
That's awesome.
I bet the Double Dare handheld game was more fun than the NES Double Dare game.
Probably. I feel like that would benefit from simpler, more streamlined controls.
Yeah. Don't go away. Nickelodeon will be right back.
You were expecting someone else?
Super spy James Bond, Agent 007. The Bond franchise has been around for 60 years and has left an impact on movie history that films still borrow from to this day.
Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond.
Bundy. Al Bundy.
The name is Bond. Lou Bond.
But are you aware of how much of an impact the franchise had on pop culture in the 80s and 90s? Chances are you've seen several Bond references and didn't know that that's what they were at the time.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Agent Dexter. I expect you to smile.
Austin Powers, Doug, Rugrats, Simpsons, Full House, Friends, even movies like The Santa Claus and Gremlins, and so many more all borrow elements from the Bond franchise. For our third bonus exclusive video, Brett and I discuss as many pop culture references that we can come up with that all allude to the Bond franchise. How many references can you think of? You will only find the episode exclusively on our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/SplatAttack and join tier Splat Standing or Splatceptional to get access to our exclusive episodes. Get your vodka martinis and get ready for a spy-tastic time.
And now, back to the First Kids Network, Nickelodeon.
All right, so without further ado, we're going to jump into our This or That segment. This or that, time to play this or that. All right, so for This or That video game edition, we'll ask Alex and Max a series of questions that, basically help them decide, would you like this or that? There's no right or wrong answer. We're just curious to hear your answers, and you can simply answer with one choice or elaborate on it. So question 1, Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo?
100% Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo is my favorite console of all time. The sound and the music, that alone for Super Nintendo, I love the soundtracks. The sprites, there's so many fun games. Chrono Trigger, all the Super Mario ports. There's just so much. NBA Jam. I love Super Nintendo so much. I'm going Super Nintendo 100 out of 100 times.
I echoed the same sentiment. That was the one that I played the most. I enjoyed the Genesis when I played it, but never to the degree where I had to have this thing. The Super Nintendo was the one that I had and played the fire out of. And I also found it amusing in the marketing that Sega Genesis was very aggressive. Sega! And it was very much about how they're better than Nintendo.
Yeah. Genesis does what Nintendo don't, was their big ad.
and Nintendo was just, okay, we'll just keep coming out with good games. Yeah. And they did, and that's why they're still here, and Sega's not.
Yeah, Sega kind of burned out like Ren and Stimpy did.
Ooh,
yeah.
I'm going to actually go with Genesis, but also as my childhood answer, as my today answer, I got to go with both because I don't discriminate across platforms anymore. It's really just more about the games themselves and how much fun I have. And those Mario games, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy. I'm trying to think what else was popular on the system. Donkey Kong Country. Oh my goodness, I would play that nonstop. They're just quality games, and you can't beat that no matter how much advertising you got going with you. So, Sonic's pretty cool, but there wasn't much aside from like Toe Jam and Earl or like Echo the Dolphin or maybe the Batman game or
James Pond.
Yeah, James Pond that we talked about in our Patreon episode. Oh my god.
Altered Beast.
Yeah, Altered Beast is our classic. So, each system has their own like gotta try games. It's just a matter of like what's your style and preference. Also Streets of Rage and Gunstar Heroes, that's good too. So Genesis, but also SNES for me.
It's funny. I was thinking about like when we were kids, the kind of litmus test of if someone was rich was if they had both Super Nintendo and Sega.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I had a friend so I can go over his house and he can come over my house so we could save money.
Because if you had both, I was like, oh, you're rich.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because most of the time it was either or you didn't have either
right.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yep.
All right, well, piggybacking off of that, for question 2, 8-bit or 16-bit graphics?
16, definitely. Similar, just the sounds and the sprites and the colors. I'm going 16. Even though I have more NES games, which is ironic. I think the library is bigger, but Super Nintendo, Sega. It's just there was something about it that was just a magical time in video game history.
Agreed. I also say 16-bit. I enjoyed the 8-bit games. I still play the 8-bit games, but just a broader palette of things to create with.
I'm going to agree with you as well, 16-bit all the way, because NES, Genesis, whatever console was around at the time, they really hit their stride with that improvement of what worked before, whereas like 8-bit just laid the foundation, and they still found creative ways to make it colorful, but you couldn't get like shaded nuances, or you couldn't get very detailed, complex patterns going on, or they didn't even have the FX chip, which allowed you to do some really cool things on the SNES with like rotating graphics and whatnot. So I think 16-bit, and it's aged like fine wine. I still play retro games like that today.
Yep.
Question 3, 2D or 3D games?
For me, this is hard to answer because it's like, what era are we talking about? So if we're talking like nostalgic,
I say in the context of the 90s.
Okay,
because
definitely.
if we include every era, that's going to be a very difficult question. We'll be here all day.
Definitely 2D then, because especially like the Nintendo 64 and a lot of the PlayStation games have not aged well. There's this because it's the camera angles and stuff like we were talking about earlier in the Rugrats game. So like the 2D, it was just, there is a sprite in the front, and there's a background. So there's a foreground, there's a background, and it's just simple. So with the 3D, oh my gosh, I played Bubsy 3D. Have you guys played that? That is one of the worst games ever. Awful.
Yeah, I agree.
So I bought that game thinking it was going to be cool and stuff. It was like really cheap. Game's awful. So it's games like that where it's just like 3D back in the day. More times than none, the game sucked.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, Bubsy sucked in general, but it sucked less on SNES with 1 and 2.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I agree with that. If we're sticking to retro gaming, 2D definitely, because you did have some great 3D games, especially when the 64 came out. But I mean, Super Mario World, Super Mario 64,
so
brilliant game. But then you got Castlevania on the 64, and not as much. Most of the time, the 3D in early or late 90s just was not well done. But they were still getting their feet wet at that point. But definitely 2D and retro gaming.
I think I'll have to go with both on this one, even though I lean towards 2D, just because most of my nostalgia is evenly split between the Sega Genesis and Sony PlayStation 1 growing up. And they had a lot of great titles too, outside of, the 90s Nick ones that we reviewed today. Mascot games like Sonic and Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Super Mario, because I did have an N64 at the time as well. I can't beat that gameplay, and even if some of them don't look quite as aesthetically pleasing, it's still good enough where you're like, yeah, okay, I can stand looking at this for a playthrough or two. Like especially with the better design games, like GoldenEye or any of the ones we already mentioned, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, anything like that. That's just really refined. So I gotta give it to both of them because I have great memories of each, and some games age better than others, but in both categories. Question 4. Are Monsters for SNES or Are Monsters for Sega Genesis?
I've never played the Genesis version, so for me, it's Super Nintendo.
I am going to easily say Super Nintendo, just because you have a button for doing the special combinations and not a combination. I just point done.
I'm going to be the odd one out and go with Genesis because A, that's what I grew up with, and B, I got used to the button combinations, even if the hit detection wasn't great. And for our last question of this or that, Rocko's Modern Life or Ren and Stimpy video game?
Easily the Ren and Stimpy video game. So if we're talking about the ones that we reviewed today.
Yeah.
So yeah. Definitely. If you're paying attention, that was my highest rated game that we did out of the 5. So I'm gonna go Ren and Stimpy.
That's like asking, would you rather use the porta potty or would you rather go into this palace with a golden toilet? I will go to Ren and Stimpy easily.
So the porta potty then.
I'll do one better, Alex. It's like asking, would you rather wipe with Charmin soft or sandpaper?
Sandpaper.
Exactly.
I mean, some people like it rough.
or a cheese grater.
No. Yeah. I'm gonna go with Ren and Stimpy. I did not like the Rocco game. Points for the graphics, but the Stimpy's Invention I enjoyed more, even if it had a couple sections that bothered me.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's take out the cartridges and unplug our consoles because we're done with this episode. If you can turn any 90s Nickelodeon show into a video game, what would it be, Slimesters and Gatcoids? How would you play, and also what genre would it be? We've mentioned during the episode that we'd like to see like a Legends of the Hidden Temple video game or redo the Rocco one. So, let us know at splatattack2021@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram if you have any retro game 90s Nickelodeon ideas that you'd love to share in a future Mona's Mailbag segment. With that being said, Max, it was a real blast from the past to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us to talk video games. And where can all of our listeners find you at?
Yeah, we're at Ready to Retro. So it's 2. So we're on all the major podcasting platforms. We have a partnership with Spreaker right now. So it is the iHeart podcasting platform. So get to know them. That's great. I will say I wanted to bring this up, and I'm not trying to prolong this episode, but just thoughts. Have you guys played the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl yet?
I have not, but I've seen it, and I like that there's 90s Nick characters in it, like Opalina, Ren and Stimpy, and Reptar.
Yeah. I'll just say it's a lot of fun. It's not at the tier of Smash Bros, which it for me, like, I love Smash Bros. I love Ultimate. So to like be really familiar with that and like play the Brawl game, it's kind of hard. Reptar is OP and it's only he's just, and that's what sucks is like there's certain characters that are just better than the other ones. So and the hit detection's kind of weird. I enjoyed it. Like I got it pretty much on launch day. So it's fun. I'm hoping that they release more characters than just the Ninja Turtle characters. Like, I don't know. I would love to see, Artie, the strongest man in the world. Like, that would be cool. I don't see that happening, but that would be fun to see that. But, like, Powder Toast Man's in it, which is cool. But I had to mention that.
They're trying.
Yeah, I had to mention
cool.
that. So, yeah. But, yeah, go follow us, Ready to Retro. It's myself, my cousin Chris, and the Duchess of Horror, Chelsea. We talk about, 80s and 90s, mostly 90s, but we have some really cool interviews. If you love Nickelodeon stuff, we do Nickelodeon. We do a whole month in November. We call it Nick November. And we've had guests from all that's been on there. So we've had like Angelique Bates and we've had Elisa Reyes. So, yeah. So, I know if you're listening to this podcast, you love Nickelodeon. So if you're looking for more Nickelodeon content, you could go to Ready to Retro. But Splat Attack, love you guys. You guys are so awesome. And the content that you guys put out is like top tier. So just from one podcaster to another, you guys are doing great work and keep it up.
Thank you, Max. That means a lot to us. We greatly appreciate your work too, because you're no slouch either.
Yes.
Love the Hook and Clue episodes in particular. That really hit hard for me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, Slimesters and Gatcoids, time to return these video games, but tune in next time as we head from video game to game show territory with a uniquely formatted episode, which we call Nick and Josh, Legends to the End. What do you think it's about? Why don't you figure that out? All we can say is let's rock, and it's going to be a fun one because we're going to cover a whole wide of topics. And these guys are just itching to tell us all about their experiences. So we hope you join us for episode 22, featuring these two guys. Alex, would you drain the slime tank for us, please?
Aye, co-captain. If you're going to the store, get me a copy of that Real Monsters game.
You got it. Actually, let me get two just in case. One for me, one for you.
All right, I'm down.
Do you want the SNES or Genesis version?
SNES. I want the button.
Mobile port. Got it.
Ow!
All right, Slimesters and Gackoids. Splat you later.
Reprise the theme song and roll the credits.
Hard to believe, folks, but it's time to say goodbye.
Nighty-night.
Hey, check us out next time for more adventure and another great legend of the Hidden Temple.
What'll we do till then?
Chill for a couple. We'll be back. You're on, Nick.
And it was time for the superhero to move on.
I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed.
Bye-bye.
Are you a vidiot? Do you get video vision? Experience TV trances? Or have the urge to scream? Then you are a vidiot. And the new Ren and Stimpy Super Nintendo game is just for you. It's 4 adventures in 1. The Boy Who Cried Rat. In the Army. Stimpy's Invention. And Maroon. Warning, may induce fits of happiness. It's vidiots for vidiots like you. New from THQ for Super Nintendo. Also available on Game Boy.